Welcome to Wellywood Wargaming, where the grim dark never sleeps. Crack open a bottle of Wild Snake and spark up a low stick as we take a journey down Underhive.
Howdy folks, and welcome back. In this episode, I'm going to be discussing 10 of the things that I wish I knew getting into Necromunda back in 2017. Now, I did play back in 1995, but this is a different animal, and I think this episode will be very useful for those newer players that are looking to step across from games like Warhammer 40,000 or Kill Team or other systems, maybe even outside of Games Workshop's remit as well. Let's get straight into it then. In at number 1, we've got Embrace the Narrative. Now, I've spoken at lengths about this topic a lot of times in the past, but I think just a quick one on this. It's just really important to get across the idea that Necromunda is definitely aimed at more of a narrative way of playing the game. It is more of an RPG generally. I know there's people out there that play this fairly competitively, and that's absolutely fine. I'm not telling you how to play the game, but there are some key differences when you're coming over from something like Warhammer 40,000 or even Kill Team. You're going to expect things to be fairly tight, fairly clean, and fairly competitive and balanced as well. Necromunda is not that. It is messy, it is chaotic, and you have to embrace the narrative element of the game to really fully enjoy it and get out of it the most that you can possibly get out of Necromunda. In Necromunda, if you hit a rule or you come across something that's a little bit ambiguous, generally speaking, that's going to happen a lot in Necromunda, especially across the absolute wealth of books and information that we've got here. The best thing to do, and my piece of advice generally, is either roll off for it or just do what feels right in this case. There is a lot of this in Necromunda, and for some people it really does their head in. I think that's part of the beauty of it, and it adds a bit of character and just a little bit of sort of world building to it. You are part of the story, and that really is the emphasis on Necromunda. Number 2, tokens are life. Without tokens in Necromunda, this game can be pretty difficult to track and play as well. And there are a number of different ways of using tokens. We have ammo tokens, activation markers, which are probably the most important, as well as blaze, insanity, a bunch of other conditions that do pop up in Necromunda. Now, while I don't like the look of a Necromunda board being covered in tokens, I would suggest putting your tokens on the actual miniatures on the board instead of on the fighter card. I find that it's far easier for me to sort of know what's going on the table if I see someone with a blaze marker on their actual fighter physically. I find it's very difficult to keep track of this on fighter cards, and I know a lot of newer players tend to do this when they're coming into Necromunda. So my advice on this one is use appropriate tokens that are bold and clear on the models and fighters that are on the table at all times. Number 3, it didn't take me too long to figure this one out, but generally speaking, more bodies, more betterer. So I would say that the small elite gangs, while very fun to play, tend to get out-activated in a sort of action economy of Necromunda. Now, what I mean by that is that generally speaking, if you're building a gang in Necromunda, no matter what it is, even if it is a fairly elite gang that's quite expensive like Van Saar or Venator's or something like that, just consider the way that the bottle mechanic works in this game means that you will be bottling out very early unless you have skills or tactics that prevent you from doing that. So I would always recommend more guys over more equipment, generally speaking. If you can squeeze in another body instead of that extra plasma gun or whatever, it's usually preferable in a campaign or even in a skirmish game as well. More bodies tends to mean that you're going to be sticking around longer in your games and thus having more time spent playing Necromunda and enjoying it instead of just bottling out at the first drop of a hat. Number 4, this is advice to all of you, and it's just a preference, I suppose, but don't spam. Spamming is really, really boring. It's boring for you to play with. If you have 5 plasma guns in your gang, it's just boring. You're going to obliterate everybody, sure, but the guys that you're playing against will not appreciate you for it. Spam is dull. Try and mix it up as much as possible. I've found that the gangs that I've enjoyed playing the most have been the gangs that have lots of different stuff, not just repetition. If I'm playing Escher, sure, I get 5 credit las guns. I'm not going to abuse that and just take an absolute ton of las guns because, frankly, it's just boring. Just because you can do a thing doesn't mean you should do a thing, and I would say avoid spam generally. On a side note to this, I would always say, and I'd always recommend actually bringing a sidearm or a backup weapon in most cases as well. You can give a fighter a 5-credit stub gun or something similar, maybe even some grenades to add to that bolt gun or sort of main weapon that they're carrying as well. I'd always recommend this, mainly because you are going to run out of ammo. In some games, everybody's going to run out of ammo, and that's just going to happen. So having a backup weapon is really key in this. But again, avoid spam with those backup weapons. Give someone a fighting knife here, a stub gun there, some frag grenades there. Just sort of make it a little bit more, variation, I suppose, in the stuff that you're taking generally across the board, and you'll just have a better time of it, and so will your opponents. Number 5, and this isn't an easy one. It really does depend where you come from, and I hate saying this, but play with the right people. What I mean by this is if you've got toxic sort of people in your groups that are, hurting the campaign or behave in particularly sort of obnoxious ways, call it out. Don't tolerate it. It's no fun playing with bullies and people that don't enjoy playing the game. So, those people that have got sort of toxic traits or obnoxious sort of behavior, do call it out. I know it's hard. Not everybody is very confrontational. I thrive on confrontation myself. I love it. So, if someone's a problem in a campaign, they're out. It's really that simple. Now, I understand that this is quite difficult if you've got a really small gaming group or a bunch of players that is just very, very small in an isolated location. This can be really difficult, but you're probably better off playing with yourself, not in that way, than you are playing with just really nasty people. And there's always going to be one bad apple in a bunch as well. In my experience as an arbitrator, I would always recommend dealing with these people in a fair but firm manner and just sort of trying to, again, get emphasis on the sort of narrative angle of playing. If someone's rules lawyering every single turn, it gets really flipping annoying. And if you're that person doing it, please bear in mind that it's really annoying for your opponent if you're calling absolutely every single rule out. Sometimes it's better to just roll off for it or just avoid the argument in general. If a player is having tantrums every time their fighters go out of action, that is not a player. That is a toddler. Avoid these people at all costs. Try to find the right tribe and keep trying to find the right tribe until you do. And it will happen. You inevitably will find those people that are on the same wavelength as you. Keep on to them and never let go. Number 6, height over width or size of the board. I would say building lots of height, of elevation in your Necromunda terrain is so much more preferable and leads to a much more engaging and fun time when you've got people falling off 4th or 5th story buildings. And it also makes the board bigger just by being able to go up different levels. Now, if you've got a 2x2 or a 3x3 foot board, if you've got lots and lots of elevation in there, suddenly that board feels a whole lot bigger to play on. So I would always recommend playing on slightly more condensed but slightly higher up terrain generally over, say, a quite sparse 4x4 or bigger board. I tend to find those first few turns, if you're playing on those boards, tend to be just moving around, and that can be quite boring. Play on a slightly smaller board with higher up and more densely packed terrain generally. Number 7, and this is a big one. This can take a while for people to learn, but knowing when to bottle out voluntarily is a massive part of Necromunda. Never be too ashamed of turning tail and fleeing and surviving to fight another day. If you're playing a game of Necromunda and you've got guys going out of action, always roll the injury when they go out of action. Do not wait till after the game, post-battle, to do it, because the reason for this is if you roll them as they happen and there are deaths, for example, or something worse, and you realize that you're not going to be able to save these guys, that is when you bottle out. If you're getting just nothing but out colds, sure, then you can play on in a campaign and that's fine without too many losses in later games. So do bear that in mind, and if you're not having a good time and you're getting absolutely trounced, just don't be afraid to bottle out and then play the next game and enjoy it with the crew that you really want to play with and not missing too many guys. This is really key. Sometimes people just feel like they should keep playing on because the opponent's having a really good time, but you're not. That's the time to call it quits generally, and most people can come to an amicable agreement on, how and when to bottle out and stuff. So this is a really important one for new players specifically, because you see new players turning up to campaigns with all their new stuff. Their leader dies in like turn 2 or something. A champion gets hideously injured, and they just carry on playing instead of bottling out. And then their subsequent campaign games are just atrocious, and they end up hating Necromunda for it. So yeah, bottle out when you should bottle out. Number 8, pinning wins games. The pinning mechanic in Necromunda is huge tactically. You don't have to be hurting people, putting people out of action, as long as you keep them on the ground. This can win you games, specifically if there are objectives or certain things that you actually need to do in a scenario. Do consider this. If you're playing against a very close combat focused gang, for example, if you're able to pin all their fighters, they're never going to engage you in close combat. And generally speaking, lower strength weapons that are a little bit cheaper and a little bit more accurate, like las guns and whatnot, are very, very good at doing this. Just suppressive fire that pins folks and puts them on the ground, and means that they have to then spend an action to get up and either move or shoot. They can't do both of those things. They can't charge you either, and that is huge. Number 9, your leader will die. Accept the fact that your leader will die. This often happens to newer players. I've found in campaigns, they'll play their first game, their leader will get shot with a bolt gun or something, and they'll just die outright. 66, gone. And this will ruin your whole campaign, but only if you've invested so much stuff, war gear, and creds in your leader for it to really impact you. Now, of course, leaders are the best fighter in your gang, generally speaking. What I'm saying here is don't invest too much into just your leader. Spread things across your gang a little bit so that if this does happen, you have got a safety measure in a champion that can pick up the mantle of that leader and still do well. So do bear that in mind. Don't give your leader everything. I guess this is difficult with outcasts, because outcasts, the whole thing is around how good the leader is and the rest of the gang is just chaff. That can be really brutal with outcasts, but every other gang, do not go absolutely crazy on spending on your leader, because you will need a champion or two to be able to step up into his spot, even if he's not killed, which seems to happen a lot. If he's just injured and out for a game here and there, you're really going to need someone to step up and act as the gang's leader. Number 10, build a toolbox, not a theme park. This is something that I've learned playing Necromunda over years and years and lots of campaigns. Sure, each gang has its strengths and weaknesses, but pretty much across the board, you're able to mix and match things enough in most gangs so that you've got a tool and a tactic for every occasion. You're going to be facing corpse grinders every now and then. You're going to be facing toughness 5 Goliaths every now and then. There is always a strategy and a tactic that works to counter each and every gang. What I would recommend generally is not going with the same fighter types, with the same loadouts, war gear and equipment. Try and build a toolbox. And what I mean by that is you're going to want a close combat dedicated fighter. You're going to want a sniper sort of role. You're going to want a sort of saboteur, sneaky person in there if you can as well. And you're going to want cheap juves that are fast enough to go and just get objectives and zoom back without actually hurting anybody. Having a broad variety of stuff for every occasion is absolutely key in Necromunda, and you're going to have more fun as a result as well, because every gang that you play against, you will have something to combat them with. So a bonus one in at number 11 here, and you'll certainly get this if you've played Blood Bowl. In fact, any dice game really, is the dice gods hate you. They always hate you. They always will hate you. There's nothing that you can do about it. Sometimes you will have those games where everybody runs out of ammo in the first turn. I've seen it happen. It is what it is. And you might even have those games, like I mentioned earlier, where you've got multiple deaths in one game, heaven forbid. So just remember, the dice hate you. Don't expect for things to work out. Always expect the worst, and you will be less disappointed as a result. Anyway, if you like this video, please do like, share, subscribe, and check out the Patreon as well. I'll be back next week with another one. Peace out.